Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. So the Obama State of the Union address had three things in it. Grab these three, actually four, and we can use them as the wedge end of an actual recovery policy. And those are nuclear reactors, offshore drilling, high-speed rail, and a $30 billion jobs bill, which has to be at least 10 times that to begin with, but get everything going, and then you'll have unstoppable political momentum. Because once these building projects have started and you've created a couple of million jobs, nobody is going to listen to ideological arguments from Malthusians on the left or from monetarists on the right to stop them. And this will begin to take off. Now, the question with Bernanke, it's obvious that the Obama White House invested a lot of political capital in supporting Bernanke, and it just shows how impossible this is, right? You cannot have a government run by Rahm Emanuel and Larry Summers who are telling Obama, yeah, go out and be a populist with these small-bore anti-Wall Street initiatives, some of which have a little bit of merit, right? But they're just little laundry list items, small-bore symbolic stuff, Dick Morris kind of stuff, Dick Morris in reverse, right? Things that look economic populist, but they don't amount to a whole lot. You can't make that coexist with support for Geithner and support for Bernanke, and then having Larry Summers running the economic policy from behind the scenes. Let's take a look at this vote. As I said, the cloture vote was 77 to 23. That was Thursday. Yesterday, as we're recording, at about 3:45 p.m. And then by 4 o'clock, just as the markets were closing, the actual vote occurred. And on this one, it was 70 to 30. Now, let's just take a minute, and it may seem not a good use of time, but I think it is. I want you to know who voted against Bernanke. And the point of this is, if you don't hear your senator on this thing, it means that you've got to get rid of them. You've got to get them out. This is the minimum precondition for political survival. And here are the ones who are against Bernanke. Against Bernanke were Begich, Democrat of Alaska; Boxer, Democrat of California; Brownback, Republican of Kansas; Bunning, Republican of Kentucky, did yeoman service; Cantwell, Democrat of Washington, radicalizing that Cantwell; Cornyn, Republican of Texas; Crapo, Republican of Idaho; DeMint, Republican of South Carolina, an honest reactionary doing God's work, we might say; Dorgan, Democrat of North Dakota; duplicitous because he voted in favor of cloture. Dorgan was for Bernanke before he was against him; Ensign, Republican of Nevada; Feingold, Democrat of Wisconsin; Franken, Democrat of Minnesota. That's no joke. Grassley, Republican of Iowa; Harkin, Democrat of Iowa. Go Iowa. Hutchinson, Republican of Texas. That gives Texas a perfect record. Imhoff, Republican of Oklahoma. Kaufman, Democrat of Delaware. Lemieux, Republican of Florida. McCain, Republican of Arizona. There's a big vote. Merkley, Democrat of Oregon. Oregon looks good. Risch, Republican of Idaho. Idaho looks good. Roberts, Republican of Kansas. Sanders, Independent Socialist of Vermont. Sessions, Republican of Alabama. Shelby, Republican of Alabama. Go Alabama. Specter, Democrat of Pennsylvania. Thune, Republican of South Dakota. Vitter, Republican of Louisiana. Whitehouse, a surprise, a blue blood, Democrat of Rhode Island, probably afraid of getting booted out after this Scott Brown stuff. Wicker, Republican of Mississippi. Now, rather than look at that in terms of just Republicans, Democrats, go back and get one of those maps of the Populist Party. Go back to the William Jennings Bryan or similar, that was, of course, a Democrat, but tinged with populism. And you'll see the idea that Western and Southern states, Midwestern states, rural states are increasingly angry with the Fed. And that list will repay some analysis in future weeks and months. But the idea here is that there is now a building resentment and resistance to the Federal Reserve. And again, the answer is, sure, audit it on the way, but you got to regard the audit as a tool to get it nationalized. We had a couple of interesting speeches. Cantwell and Dorgan both felt compelled to come out, both Democrats, coming out against Bernanke, but then they wanted to talk about it. Cantwell of Oregon, this is a surprise because this is a person from whom one hears rather little. She gets out there and gives a big speech about the dark market of derivatives, the dark pools. She says that Bernanke is responsible for the deregulation of derivatives. Cantwell wants to regulate derivatives, and she talks about making certain kinds of derivatives or certain derivatives transactions a federal crime with jail time. This is interesting. Cantwell, an index maybe not so much of individual merit, but of general radicalization. She talks about Vancouver Iron and Steel Works. They don't market derivatives in dark pools, but then when the local bank went under and was seized by the FDIC, the credit line needed by Vancouver Iron and Steel, now this is tangible physical production, was pulled. No more credit for them. They go under. So Cantwell basically says, I'm supporting Bernanke and Tim Geithner because they've got to support government regulation of derivatives. Well, that, of course, is the pathetic fallacy in a nutshell. But who's going to be preventing another derivatives bubble? She wants Glass-Steagall, no subsidies for the dark market of derivatives. The Volcker rule is not enough. You've got to have full Glass-Steagall. And we've had 2 decades of derivatives leading to a big financial bubble. So far, Cantwell, one of the more radical speeches, I mean, that gets you to the level of DeFazio, Kaptur, Sherman, and some of these other House Democrats. So this is going in an interesting direction. Dorgan attacks synthetic derivatives. He says the synthetic derivatives are simply a craps table. They're just a gambling casino in the lobby of Goldman Sachs. Dorgan stresses Ben Bernanke was part of the Bush team. He's an integral part of the Bush the Younger economic team. Dorgan talks about foreclosures, and he says that he, Dorgan, and I believe Grassley and 8 other senators sent Bernanke a letter saying, Dear Ben Bernanke, you have opened up the Federal Reserve for the first time in history to make loans to investment banks, not just commercial banks, Federal Reserve member banks, but now investment banks, which means brokerages, right? It means hedge funds in today's world. So let's call them hedge funds. Dorgan and these basically 10 senators, a considerable group, right to Ben Bernanke saying, we demand to know the money that you have lent to these hedge funds, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and the rest of them. And Bernanke writes back, I am not going to tell you. And that's in the middle of a confirmation hearing. What arrogance, what impudence. Too bad Moore didn't join in voting against him, but at least it is the most politicized vote of a Fed chief in United States history. And again, it's twice as many votes as Volcker had to face against him. And remember that Volcker had brought the prime rate up to 23%, meaning that interest rates for the average person went much higher. So we've got the commentators on television that afternoon lamenting that it was the most politicized Fed vote ever, that this was unthinkable, would have been unthinkable a few years ago. Both Greenspan and Volcker essentially got a free pass for their second term. For Volcker, 16 negative votes. Greenspan, almost no negative votes. And in some cases, this was just a voice vote with no recorded vote. Again, if the Democrats had voted against Bernanke, they would have forced many Republicans to vote for him to show the true colors of the Republicans. But the corruption of the Democrats by Wall Street is overwhelming. We'll be back just a minute with our Iceland report.